All right, we got the record going on so that I can post it on the YouTube. Hey, everybody out there in Think Collaborative Land. This is our Sunday collab. And today we have the great and wise Dr. Lenny. And we have the social ninja.
I
Social.
changed my knife to a wand
Did
in
you?
honor, well, in spirit of Jamie Foxx. I didn't want to be mistaken as a domestic terrorist by the FBI, so
Smart girl.
Yeah, smart. I know. In solidarity,
yeah,
Wanda.
I'm learning from her life. So
Yeah, no, it's once you're on their radar, they'll accuse you of just about anything.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Okay, so anyway, it's today is the 22nd, December 22nd, and then we also have our presenter, LB Bork, and he has what's your main websites? Just give us.
For now, I'm going to give people packinlaw.us, and they can search my white papers on that URL.
Okay.
The main site is packalliance.us, but not our. That site has got issues right now, and
Okay.
to get on it, you can't get on it. So, yeah,
Okay.
packinlaw.us is the main one where they
Okay.
can get into the search engines. Just put packinlaw.us, and a load of white papers come up, so they can download what we're going to discuss today and
Okay.
other things.
Okay. So we're going to talk about probably we should talk about the legal stuff on the front end, and then we'll talk about the community stuff on the back end.
Okay.
So we'll just kind of do it that way. And then also I wanted to give just a quick update of some stuff. I'm going to be hosting for a biodynamic community in Colorado. Viva La Foundation, I think is what they're called, but they do a lot of amazing stuff in Colorado, totally out of the box biodynamic people. And they host all kinds of amazing teachers from around the globe, to come to their biodynamic. But in the wintertime, they usually do a local study program, but I've talked her into doing an internet study program. And so I'm going to be hosting on my Zoom the study program. And the study program is going to go on from, I think, January 2nd. And it's from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. Anybody can attend. It's free. And the study is going to start out with the first volume. I think there's 8 volumes of the karma work that Steiner did before he was murdered. It was like the last body of work that he did. And so we're starting out with the first book, the first volume, and we'll see where it goes. But it's going to be every Thursday till at least April. So we don't know how many books we'll get through. Maybe volume 1 and volume 2. And if it works out, she may help. I may be assisting her to do more online study work with Steiner and maybe biodynamic stuff. But it's free. And it's a free course, and it's going to be super good. And so I'm going to put here in the chat the first book in case anybody's interested. And then when I put the and so all of it's going to be studied from that book. It's not a deferral of conversation. It's not kind of an open conversation, sort of, but it's all going to be about the book. So if people want to come on, get the book before January 2nd, and then read the first chapter, and then probably the first chapter is going to be the first discussion. And then Karen, I think, is going to actually do the help with the study group. Anyway, it's super easy. It's really, this kind of work is mind-blowing. Steiner's like just completely mind-blowing. But anyway, and I'll put the link for the book. And if anybody's interested, once this goes up on the Think Collab, please contact me. on my email address, and you can contact me at consciousnessofeconomics@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, coe-llc.com, and there's a contact page for that. But it's open, and but you'll need a link, a Zoom link to get on to the study group. Okay, that's it. That's what I have. Okay. All right. So you wanted to talk about status, right? Legal status.
Yeah, status and law. That was something I basically discovered. I got into the movement back in the 1990s, and people were just kind of floundering around, less worse than they are today. But yeah, they didn't know who they were and what was going on. I was part of a few citizen law groups back in the 90s down in Arizona. And we were seeing people go to prison and losing property based on their belief that they were free under the Constitution. And no one really could explain what was going on. Just like people couldn't explain what a republic was compared to what democracy is. And that's a whole other can of worms, but it's all tied together in what my research has brought forward. But anyway, after doing my own research, I came to the conclusion that people's status was wrong based on a thing called world communism. They instituted back in the 1800s. Of course, it goes deeper than that. It goes back at least 500 years, if not 3,000, you know. Depends how deep into the rabbit hole you want to go, but to connect the dots, you need to do all this, which I've done. And my book, The Red Amendment, goes into the details of how this world communism was installed into America during the 1800s. And basically, it's the same as the Roman Empire was doing. I read or what did rather, is what they're doing in America and all over the world, probably. I've only looked at probably Canada as another country, so-called country. Canada is made up of, I think, 4 provinces, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, their communist overlay was put in place in 1871. And that's when they adopted their red flag, which is socialist. And, you know, red represents communism and socialism. But America's was instituted in 1868 with the 14th Amendment, or what they call Reconstruction. They changed the system and put this communist overlay into America at that time. And it created a different status. So under international law, which Congress recognized, and all countries in the nation recognize, the United Nations even recognizes it. That's where my work just centers on, the change and what's happened to the United States. And I was hoping to get people all over the world involved in this. And I don't think too many people really still to this date know what happened. They commandeered the movement craftily. I think Aaron Russo, for example, is one of the people that helped sway things and put an end to the law movement back in the 90s, because most people are interested in, as you can see in things like Trump now, that they got everyone looking at politics. And politics does, you know, incorporate law, but law on its own stands by itself. So, you know, the law sometimes sleeps but never dies. It's the maximum of the law. So that's what we're really looking at with status, is what the law of nations looks at, and not the communist political overlay that they've done the past 150 years.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When you mentioned Canada and the red flag,
Mm-hmm.
was the flag different before?
To be honest, I just know when Canada was formed as this overlay, Of course, there were Canadians before that, right? Just like America had Americans before the 14th Amendment overlay. I don't know exactly what the position of, the four providences were before that. They were entities of Britain, just like the United States was. But as far as, their flag, which is just a international symbol or status symbol for the country, the Republic country of Canada, I don't know. So yeah,
That's very interesting. Something came out, like, blaringly stood out to me. And for those of you who may or may not know, I have tenets, I would say, of what people would say is like clairvoyance or whatever. But there is one memory standing out to me, like glaringly, and just came screaming at me when you said that. And I'm thinking back in the 1970s, we had the Barnyard Ball Club, and my older sister said, we are going to use these little sheets of white paper, and we are going to color every map in the world. Okay, I was the youngest kid on the block, and so whenever we ran out of marker, I got sent. The only color we ever ran out of, literally, was red. And I was literally sneaking into my dad's den, using markers that aren't like Crayola for the kids. I'm talking about like office type product here. And I'm getting the red marker, and I was just like, I just remember, and why does this memory stand out? I have no idea, but I just felt inclined to bring it up because I was like, first of all, I don't like this activity because you guys are doing all the coloring and I'm doing running and sneaking and getting all these red markers. Secondly of all, why does every single flag have red in it? Why am I not fetching and running to get blue or some other color? Which I don't know. It's just
interesting observation.
Yeah, I think we should probably look a little bit more into that. Just wanted to make that little side comment. But thanks for answering the question. Appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, where from here?
Okay, so talk to us about what legal status is.
Well, back in the 1990s, people were talking about, oh, you don't want to be a 14th Amendment citizen. It's for blacks. And, you want to be a state citizen. And basically, through my research, I determined that both those positions are wrong. And nationality was the real issue. There's some people out there saying that you want to be an American national, which is nonsense. Each state in the Union of their countries, and each country is a sovereign nation under international law. And each state carries its own nationality. This is one thing that, is something that really was never ever talked about, because United States, is probably one of the youngest countries in the world. It was based on taking over the Indian tribes, as Bridgette knows. So when they installed the communist overlay here, it was easy for them to do because it was grounded in or based in a plethora of, just mobs of ignorant people from different countries of the world or different nationalities. People today, such as my parents, and I showed them in the passport, that their nationality is citizen of the United States. And they still think, when they talk about themselves and their heritage, they say our nationality is German, for example. We are German, our family. But that's not true, because that's not it. That's a heritage. Their people come from that country, Germany, or our people, for example. But each state being a nation, ties back to that's your nationality. And what they've done, Communism is progressive. You've all heard, the people listening have heard that word before. A progressive is a communist or a Marxist. And they'd have to do this progressively or they couldn't get it done because no one would fall for it or put up with it. So my point is that to get stair step this to the New World Order or world communism, world government, they had to do it incrementally. And what they did with America with Reconstruction is take all the states and make them one nationality. That's the American nationality. Which doesn't exist. It's not part of the original principles of the American Union, nor is it under international law. So basically, communism has to do with unification of different nationalities into one, and centralization is part of Marxism, and that's the difference, or that's the essence of communism. Centralization of control. And, communism in its simplest form is, I might as well go into that right now.
Oh, wait, can you wait 1 second?
Sure.
I'm not sure, but my dad was in law, and I think he was indicating to me as such, and Dr. Lenny, I think you may have insight on this as well. You've spent some time in Pennsylvania, but Massachusetts and Pennsylvania officially go by the name Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I remember asking my father, not to keep bringing up my childhood during this taping, but I remember asking him, like, what's the difference? And then Dr. Lenny, I remember you saying that something that I had encountered in literature that I was reading talked about that Pennsylvania's quote unquote Supreme Court within the state of Pennsylvania is more powerful than the actual even national Supreme Court, the federal one. And I was like, that's insane. And so you look at, Philadelphia was first where the capital city was, which is, Pennsylvania. And I'm wondering if there's anything with regards to certain states being more quote unquote independent than others. Dr. Lenny, I was going to see if you could chime in because I know we had talked about this in the past.
Yeah, Pennsylvania Supreme Court claims jurisdiction ahead of the U.S. Supreme Court. And when they give rulings, they feel that they're giving rulings for the rest of the United States somehow. But at this point, I'm struggling with the whole idea of the legal fiction overlay. And I don't know that the legality of the legal system is even there any longer. It's one of those things where just because they claim to rule doesn't necessarily make them the rulers. And if we're going to have everybody be sovereign, I don't know how that would work out, because some people yield their sovereignty right off and don't wish to be sovereign, and other sovereigns don't feel the right to speak for people. So I'm basically confused and thinking that the overlay that we've been given called history really has been breaking down a lot lately.
Interesting observation. I might agree with that. I too don't understand or know about what you're talking about in relation to these commonwealths, but I must say that my next book was going to be the Commonwealth, because I believe there's substance to it in regard to the state is something different than Commonwealth. Commonwealth, as far as I'm concerned, speaks for itself. As we know, Britain and even the United States has, commonwealths incorporated into its control or system. For example, Puerto Rico is considered a commonwealth, but the United States controls it. So that term is nimble. I had a judge tell me one time, back in my case in the 1990s, I was persecuted or prosecuted unjustly, and during the case, I, wanted counsel, as many people know that you have, or you're afforded counsel under the Constitution for your court cases, and I said I don't want an attorney. I want my own counsel to help with my case. And the judge says, well, we use counsel, attorney, and lawyer all interchangeably. And I go, that's not right. So anyway, they've used Commonwealth and state the same way. Under this 14th Amendment overlay, they basically say that the Commonwealth and states are the same, which they're not. They mean different things. And I have not done the deep research on what the difference is, but the word itself states what should happen, and it's not communistic, but it should lay down a set of rules where the wealth among the nation should be common. So what we have now is basically with communism and Marx and people like this guy named Max Steiner. Bridgette and I talked about that this last week. I believe that I don't think Max Steiner and the Steiner she's studying under are the same people, but they come from the same country, which is Germany, where a lot of these problems stem from. Basically, they had this club of egotists. Is that egotist or egoist? Egotist, I think it is. And their principle was that if you had the knowledge and wherewithal, meaning family power or whatever the case may be, if you were smarter than others, that you could take over or use that power, authority to, destroy others or take advantage of them, which I am totally against. It's just not right.
Well, and I think that's kind of like what happened with Steiner and all the people that he was involved with. They didn't really want that. They wanted to see people be able to spiritually evolve. And a lot of it for Steiner came back to nutrition of the soil. If people's bodies were not healthy, they wouldn't be able to think for themselves.
Wow.
Excellent sidelines to this.
This is a great conversation.
Steiner, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, my next book, I plan to be the Commonwealth, and I'll delineate what the history of it is if I do it. And basically, that's where America and other countries need to go. They have to have Commonwealths. The state thing or overlay that they created is pursuant to communism. It was a stair-step thing. It's basically a totalitarian state where the higher archons or rulers, they what they're doing with people today, or these kids, they're teaching them to be self-centered individuals about themselves, and that's why I disagree with sovereign. That's a tool or a thing that people have come up with to separate themselves from the communist system, which I don't agree with it, because my goal has always been to take the states back in the Union, to give them back to the people instead of this communist faction that controls everything.
LB, has it gotten so large that the concept of a country consisting of 50 states should be reduced to an agreement, and that each of the 50 states should be considered a separate country?
Yeah, well, that's how it was originally supposed to be, is that each state would have been its own functioning country.
Right. That's what international law sees.
And I think that's what my dad tried to explain to me.
Economics sees too, because what do they say? California is the 7th largest economy in the world. So in a lot of other framework, they talk about it as a separatist, separatized thing, just not to us.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Texas thinks it's all that and that much more too. But
hey now,
speaking of Texas, they do have a different agreement under the union contract. Whatever it is, I haven't looked deeply into, but Their entrance into the Union is different. The Republic of Texas.
Well, and there's something to note is that they're making a big move because they started suing the federal government for their gold back. And the way I understand it, the only gold, if there is gold, that the federal government is holding on to, and I suspect that they even spent Texas's gold. This is why Texas hasn't got it back yet. Is that the Texas is going to get their gold back. They're going to be totally separate from the U.S. and then they're going to gold back their own currency so that they can do, oil and trade, having their own gold back currency with other countries. So how that looked was that I know this because I was one of the first people to get a account at the Texas Bullion Depository. And so that you could, order gold and platinum, palladium, or whatever else, and then they put it into a vault there for you, so that you don't have to hold it at home, but it's all in solids. They send you a picture, they do all of it, but it was in. What happened was the federal government said, well, Texas, you guys don't really have a vault, and we don't have any place to legally send you your gold back. And Texas said, well, if that's the problem, we'll build a vault. So they're building this unbelievably massive, military proof, vault in Texas for solids, for solid, stuff. Eventually they'll give you like a ATM card and then you can pay your bills with it and it'll fluctuate, go up and down, but as cash, better than cash. But anyway, so they actually have been devising their own system to, get fully away from the United States. And the one thing that they have that no other state has in order to do this, their own power grid, because all the other states are reliant on the federal government's two power grids that basically come together in the middle. And Texas is the only one that doesn't have a power grid. So no matter how they threaten the federal government's like, well, we'll attack your, we'll shut down your power. And they're like, you can't, because we're not on your system. So every time the federal government tries to send, some type of shenanigans towards Texas, it doesn't work because they are separate in power. They are separate in power and monopolies. They don't have those. And they're getting their gold back, and they've created this huge vault. So those are the important things, I think, sometimes if you're going to decide if your state can be its own country, is you're going to have your own power grid, and you're definitely going to have your own money system. Those are the two, I think, most important things that are going to be able to, probably get more people behind it happening in your state.
Okay. Being somebody that actually lives in Texas, can I ask a question? Because I mean, I'm not from Texas.
Yeah, I don't know. That's all I know about Texas. So,
but this is what I'm asking to the collective group here. So back during the shenanigans when Rick Perry pulled the card and tried to sue the federal government for not having Planned Parenthood as an approved quote unquote provider for Medicaid, Medicare recipients. And okay, whatever your view is on Planned Parenthood, please put that aside. I'm just focusing on the logical aspect here. All right. One of the things that was coming up in this area and talked about a lot, I want to say this was around 2000-ish, 12-ish, something around there. One of the things that was being talked about was that Texas is one of the few states that needs the federal government's permission to quote unquote secede. Therefore, it will never be able to successfully secede. And let me just tell you some nuances about Texas. If you ever wondered where "Don't Mess with Texas" comes from, that comes from the fact that they have been ruled, this land has been ruled by 6 different flags. Ever hear of the amusement park, 6 Flags? That's because, and the whole "Don't Mess with Texas," and the reason why we're so gaha, firearms, is just okay, we're done being passed between territories, be it Spanish, Mexico, United States, whatever, British, French, whatever. we're tired of that. Don't mess with Texas. We're going to take care of our own. But I don't really know that that's truly what's going on. But again, I'm like clairsentient here. And so I'm deferring to you all to see if you know of anything in that.
See, those are all, that's an important fact or issue that needs to be addressed. And that's why I get so upset about this movement. It's been disintegrated. There's too many chiefs and not enough Indians. My book, which I want to serve to Congress next year as a legal notice, because it blows this whole communist overlay out of the water. You know, they can't, claim I didn't know, or what's the word or term? Plausible what was it? Plausible deniability.
Deniability, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's got to end. And PAC has always been about unifying people. That's what coalition means, PAC, People's Awareness Coalition, the PAC Alliance, getting people working together. But of course, the New World Order doesn't want people working together. Their whole thing the last 25 years has been to divide things up. And like I said, Aaron Russo was part of it. He was, claimed to be this big, savior to the movement. But all he did was confuse things and drive things such as his cohort. Supposedly Russo's dead now, but Gary Franchi has got people involved in Trump. And Trump's nothing but the New World Order, like all the presidents have been over the years. So, it's divide and conquer, simply out of Sun Tzu. It's what they're doing to us. And they've destroyed any unity and any knowledge of law to people. And that's why I get upset at all these flat earthers and everything else that goes along with the confusion, deception, and misdirection. As you people might know, that Houdini used misdirection in his magic tricks. That's all they're doing with what they do is misdirection and confusion. Order out of chaos is one of their mottos to get things accomplished. So that's all, any unity in the movement that was confused back then, and it's just worse now because there's too many people not working together. And when I got into this, there was a group called Right Way Law. That wasn't my group down in Arizona, but it was another group that was doing good things with law. They're defunct now because of the confusion and operatives that are out there that have screwed things up. I went to them on, the basis of doing a seminar because I had written the book and I wanted to introduce it to the movement. And Right Way Law was doing great things. They had clubs in just about every state in the union. And they said, fine, let's do that. So we held our first one, I think it was 2000. I'd have to look back on the exact year. Things are so cloudy anymore. Last 10 years have been horrible as far as the movement goes, and me trying to chase cats. But it went fine. But after that, it went downhill. One of their people even took, as far as I'm concerned, Jack, what's his name? Jack, forget his name. He's still doing stuff. He does government contract work. That's a red flag right there. He took the club down. Within a couple of years, it was down based on this strawman UCC crap.
Wow, this sounds almost identical to Jamie Foxx's story about the VA whistleblowers group. Interesting.
Yeah,
it's the same MO.
They infiltrate and take things down. Anyway.
Isn't that a Jesuit technique?
Probably.
Yeah.
I see, but my point is, I had to form PAC Alliance about 10 years ago, and that's gone nowhere because the people haven't figured out that the adversary has more money to infiltrate and do things. They own the internet. The internet's 90%, I would say, filled with operatives. Everything on YouTube's just stolen information. I've had people steal my information, twist it around. So that's the main thing that we have to work on, is getting a solid group. People in this movement are too namby-pamby. Oh, no, let them say what they need to say and this and that. And, someone like me can detect. Anyway, I got off point. I'm sorry. The seminar went well.
I think it's really important that each of us do our own work ahead of coming together. That when I get into groups where there are leaders and the followers haven't done their own work, they
Right.
can be persuaded by the leaders to think things that they haven't thought through. And one of the things I really like about this collaborative is each of us comes from a different base, and we're all thinking about how what we learn relates to our base for a fundamental knowledge, a foundation. And the idea that law supersedes over other foundations just bothers me. I don't give credence to the lawyers who think that they can walk in somewhere else and tell people how it must go.
Yes, I agree with some of that. I got off on a rabbit trail, but my point of that seminar is I went to a group that was established. We were working together. I did my own research, wrote a book, okay? In 20 years, no one's debunked anything in my book. I am as far as I'm concerned, I'm an authority de facto, and I've been buried. And that's how these people work. And you're right, Dr. Lenny, that if people don't do their own research, they're going to get, swayed to another position. And that's what's happened.
Well, 100%. May I type something I see going on here?
Sure.
Just on your show, Dr. Lenny, if you don't know, our listeners don't know, LB is from Revolution Radio and has a show on Tuesday evenings called The Ultimate Remedy. And he has a frequent recurring guest, Mike Gaddy. And I was going crazy, and I apologize if I disrupted your show, LB, but I was going crazy about why he was so hyper focused on this word expressly. And it was a big deal as to whether it was used or not used. And it turns out there was one, I think it was a congressman from South Carolina that insisted that the word needed to be used. I'm like, why is this word so important? And it was basically because it meant that including it or not including this word would make or break a robust, well-written amendment that could or could not be subverted by greedy powers that could be now or in the future to come. And so it was interesting how he was able to actually give facts, because like he was boots on the ground, running, went, looked, found out exactly who came, who didn't come, did this person actually get an invitation, were the 13 colonies at the time, were they being fairly represented, were there actually good, strong attempts to make sure that there was equal representation of all people that this would apply to. And when it comes down to it, the answer is no. I can't give you all the details because I don't have Mike Caddy's brain. But here's the thing about law, and to your point, Dr. Lenny, is that if the common person, like myself, doesn't understand how the word expressly may or may not be abused by law, we're just going to have more of the same. So even if we get back down to the basics of law, if the Constitution is even considered law, I mean, aren't we going to have more of the same? Potentially. I mean, unless we spiritually evolve to a place where we actually feel responsible for one another, aren't we just going to continue to just subvert law by playing language tricks?
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things too, that this course that I'm taking, the Esoteric Science course by Rudolf Steiner, through the Biodynamic Association. And one of the things we talk a lot, I mean, they kind of put it into the format of the land and the soil and the minerals and stuff, but it also shows how humans have those same systems, and that the difference between the human and everything else, and what our, we talk a lot about what our social responsibility is, and even economics, because Steiner created associative economics, which was outside of the box. And Steiner felt that no land should ever be stolen from anybody, that the land served the planet, it served the insects, it served the people, it served the animals, and so it should never be bought, sold, or traded. And it should never be one of those things that should be taken away from people. I mean, that's kind of like the basis of it. But we talk a lot about this in a lot of the Steiner work. And Steiner's study is that, what is our, I think they call it the threefold human or the fourfold human. There's a book and talks about our social responsibility and how that works. But the problem is that first you have to wake people up. And even at the turn of the century, one of the things that Steiner said was that people weren't getting enough nutrient. And one of his famous quotes was, if we continue to eat from unhealthy soil, we will be trapped in the prison of our own body, which means we won't be able to socially evolve. We won't be able to spiritually evolve. We won't be able to do any of these things. And so all of it, like the way that I look at freedom or liberty or whatever we're going to coin it, is that it has to start with food. It has to start with the soil being fixed. It has to start with nature being reestablished, and put at the center of everything else.
I agree with that. And it gets back to natural things, that natural of the creator, and the founding fathers, a few of them, such as Jefferson, who is my favorite founding father. I think he was the only one that was on the right path. All the other ones were basically authoritarian socialist before so-called, well, during the whole period of time when socialism was designed. And like you people may know, that socialism is the foundation for communism. They're two different things. Communism is nothing more than an economic, blueprint. The Communist Manifesto being a declaration of war. Manifesto, that's what it means in law, to steal all countries in the world's economies and put them under the control of the communist. So a select few can make profits. That's the essence of the Communist Manifesto. It's nothing good. It's all conspiracy to steal this. And you see what it's done in the United States. The capitalists are, through corporations, are just roughshod over everything. And that's, you look at people like the president of Nestle saying that the water belongs to corporations. People have no right to it, which is total absurd bullshit. But that's the essence of the New World Order or world communism. And it's going to keep going unless it's put a stop to and people understand what's going on.
Is there a way that we can de-charter corporations? Can we reverse Citizens United and make it so that corporations do not have human rights?
Yes, exactly. That's I've said that for years, Dr. Lenny. But first, people have to be educated. That was what PAC is about. It's a coalition of people that have corrected their status, that educate people. Awareness, that's the word, awareness. People have to be aware of their surroundings and everything that is enveloped into that. Someone just turned a camera on. I don't know if you're aware of that. Might have been Bridgette.
No, I just brought, hey, Gord, you don't need your camera.
Oh, okay.
It always comes on.
Otherwise, we'll see
on automatic.
Okay, well, tilt it away from us so we don't see what you're doing.
Yeah. We don't want to see. We don't want to see that.
Hear you peeing or anything. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So anyway,
bodily functions, Bridgette.
Yeah, Gord wanted to come on. He's from Canada. He was involved with the Squamish and what they were doing to separate from Canada, and with their land territories. So he's actually was involved and is involved with that group, even though he's white. But anyway, he wanted to come on to our conversation, and he woke up late, so he's going to be listening, and we're going to let LB continue to talk about um,
Yeah,
some stuff.
I was addressing Dr. Lenny's concern or thought on corporations. And anyway, back to the simple means of that. People are natural, right? Corporations are a product of the state, so they're a creation of the state. A corporation can be told what to do totally by the government, and that's not what they're doing. They're giving these because of Congress or the legislatures, they're giving these corporations powers to usurp or overpower people, which is ridiculous. They're a monster. They should be destroyed or controlled. And because of people's ignorance, their unawareness, that's what's happening. And you're right. That's what needs to be. I don't think a corporation should, one, own property whatsoever in any country, or two, if they're doing businesses out of their state of cetus, which is where they were developed, what state, that they should be taxed to hell if they're going to be doing business in another state. Of course, that's 180 degrees opposite what's going on right now. So you're going to find a big resistance against the money powers, against that principle. So the only way to overcome it is people being aware in numbers and their education. So that's that in a nutshell.
Well, education is the biggie there, is getting people educated so they understand what all these things mean in government. When Congress passes
Right.
new bills and they're coming out, they put the fluff on the newspaper, but they don't give
Sure.
the nitty gritty that's underneath the fluff.
Yeah, before you came on, Gordon, is it?
Yeah, Gord is good.
Gord. Yeah, I was talking about how they've destroyed unity in the movement from back in the 1990s. What I've seen, it's been going on probably longer than that, but it's really accelerated because of the internet. People don't understand that the internet's controlled by these people, and they have more money. And I would estimate that 90% of what's out on the internet is basically disinformation or operatives. And the only way it's going to be taken down is if everyone unifies. I created a thing called the PAC Unification Project. Of course, that happened 10 years ago along with the PAC Alliance. The PAC Alliance is basically a secondary mechanism because people weren't the People's Awareness Coalition. PAC was a development based on people correcting their status, and people liked their Marxism so much that I was finding people weren't willing to get out of the system to do what it takes to tear this thing down based on the 100th monkey principle. And
they feel all cozy with the system for some reason.
Yeah, they love it, and that's the Marxists who run the thing, or the communists, know this, which are the capitalists. My whole thing is the communists are the capitalists, and the capitalists are the communists. It all works together. That's the way they set it up. So, it's really hard to get people on board. And back to what I was saying with this seminar with Right Way Law, that's where I say I shine above all others, because I was working with people. I didn't come out like some of these people that come out today. I'm not going to mention names now. They show up out of nowhere. They haven't written the book or done the research like I have, and then they become an authority. That's suspect to me. They're operatives. And if, like I said in my one-page paper, operatives and opportunists, it doesn't matter if they're getting paid to be an operative or a minion of the New World Order, because they're doing the same damage as an opportunist is, or an operative. It doesn't matter. They're the same thing. because they're dividing people based on their ego. They think they know everything, which I don't know everything. The only thing, there's a common law maxim that says many men know many things. No one knows everything. And I got that on my door, my my home here, so people see it when they leave my place. So, if people say that, I've had people say that they think that I know everything. No, I don't. Anyone that says that's an ass.
I agree.
And
with
they're
that.
part of the problem. So anyway, I could carry on about the negative things forever and ever, but
Well, my favorite song for these times was written back in early 60s by Simon and Garfunkel, and it's called The Sound of Silence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're suffering from now, is the sound of silence.
Silence of the majority. They've
Yeah.
been called the silent majority for a long time, and I believe that. Whatever that means is, the
Well,
Marxist.
people speak without speaking. People, it gives a very dismal picture of where we sit. Like people talk without knowing, that the words of the song just come out and say it.
Yeah. Yeah, some Garfunkel were pretty good. Good.
Well, the 60s
couple.
was a very magical time.
It was.
In respects to a lot of this. It accumulated with Woodstock, and that was sort of the end of it. And Woodstock, in a way, I mean, it was a success, but in a way, it kind of left everything empty going into the 70s.
60s was a study in itself, and I haven't gone deep into it. That's when things changed, and I believe it was the New World Order that did it. Vatican II happened. As we know, Karl Marx said that communism does away with religion. Basically, what they're doing is doing away with the multi-religions of the world and melding them into one Luciferian doctrine or control mechanism under Marxism. And that's we're seeing that going on right now. They're pitting the Christians against the Muslims. They're mixing up more and more. They're mixing up the different countries of the world with different peoples. This is all to create chaos, to create this one world system.
I think the 60s also, the end of the 60s, we had in rapid fire assassinations of Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, and the whole Kent State incident. And I really think that the hippie movement lost its bearings in the course of the fear applied to individuals now who are being taken out. And I think that a lot of the people who were active in that movement in the 60s are the worst problems here in the 2010s. That a lot of what they were fighting against, now they're on the other side preventing anything like that happening again. But the music of the 60s and 70s still resonates, and the message that we get from the music is quite a bit different from the message that we get from the history or from other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that, Lenny.
Bring up another song by Paul Simon called The Mother and Child Reunion, and oddly enough, it was the same year that the Roe v. Wade case came out. And if you look at the common law, the father of the child is the property of the father. And he was talking about the doing away of that principle, common law principle. So my point extends to, I believe, without doing the research, I've got instincts about these things. The 60s was planned opposition, the controlled opposition, to create the problem under Hegelian dialectic. It was magical in the sense that, yes, a lot of things happened, but it was a distraction to put the nails in the coffin of the old systems and go full into Marxism.
Yeah, well, that song from Simon Garfunkel came out in '63, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Same year Kennedy was shot.
Yeah, and then Jimmy made a really good statement that sort of became it gets repeated a lot, where the love of power exceeds the power of love. So basically, I think what he was saying with that is so many that were there are now loving the power that they've come to rather than the power of the love that took them there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gord, I put in the chat room that you're a technological retard, just so you know. So,
Why? Because
so
the
people
camera's still on?
understand. Yeah, well, and
Oh, this
also
camera
because
thing going on.
he wouldn't know how to do the chat thing on the side of, you know, our room. So, but Gord, I posted your favorite rendition of The Sound of Silence that other people can check out in the chat room in case they want to, by Disturbed.
Yeah, Disturbed. I was just thinking of that while you're talking about that, Bridgette.
They put the anger in that song that it needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
It's very strange how badly we've lost our way, though, as a collective. Yeah, it's planned. Generally, it is. And religion is, by and large, it's just a way of dividing people up.
it always was. Well, it was a control mechanism originally.
That's why I like the native perspective, because it's spirituality. It's not religion.
Right. It's, as far as I'm concerned, I got into chat on Revolution Radio chat yesterday with someone, and we agreed that the New Testament is basically teachings of Jesus, and it's based on spirituality and not religion. Matter of fact, the only reference to religion in the New Testament is that the religion takes care of the widows and orphans, which is pretty simplistic and natural for people to do that. Otherwise, you know, the Bible's been perverted by what I call the church, which is known as the Vatican. And that's the whole control mechanism.
And the other thing, too, is I had it in my head here just a minute ago. Sorry, I'm still waking up. And there wasn't very much coffee in the pot when I got up. I had another thought there. I'll let it lay for now. It'll come back to me. I'll let you talk for a little bit.
Gord has some timers. I get that too. Sometimes you remember, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, talking about nutrition and whatever, Bridgette, my sometimers was getting really bad. It's getting better now because I've been taking care of myself the last 2 or 3 years. So I understand that one.
Bridgette's good with that kind of stuff. She's always passing on good information to take care of ourselves in a better way.
I know. That's her forte.
Mm-hmm.
She's to be commended for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Karen left because she had to reboot. She's got some computer technology issues, so she'll come back on, and we'll get her back on. But yeah. Okay, so what else? What else do you want to talk about, Mr. Presenter LB? What other kind of law?
Well, law in general. I think you posted the dual system of law, which I wrote a few years back. It's kind of like my book in a condensed nutshell version.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It kind of goes over the principles.
Yeah, I think I sent them. I don't know if I sent people that ahead of time. I don't really know if that went out ahead of time, but yeah. So I mean, we could also in the second hour talk about community. All of us, literally all of us, Lenny, you, me, and Gord all have kind of our own ideas about what community is. I think Gord and I are probably extremely similar because we follow the native way.
Isn't community just a communist plot?
No. It's a natural thing.
I like to look at community like CO as cooperative. We're cooperating together. For the
communism didn't exist until Marx and the people behind it, manufactured it. Words are words. Like, for example, Constitution is a combination of two words, confidence and institution. Basically a
So
con
maybe,
job because of the way people operate. And I've written papers on that too.
so how about we could talk about like community ideas. So LB sent me a thing before we went on, kind of like outlining like your particular community type endeavor. And then, maybe we can have a discussion about that, about, everybody's different ideas about community, because I think we're all pretty solid on the fact that there needs to be land and there needs to be sustainability and there needs to be food grown on that land.
Well, what about in the aftermath of the books of Anastasia out of Russia, the communities that they experimented with in Russia, the schooling system too that they came out with was actually, I thought, pretty good. It's all seems to have fallen on its face now, but they came up with small communities where everybody looked after. It was all small farming communities where they grew everything they needed. Very simplistic, nothing
Well, that's kind of like
grandiose.
why Russia right now, in 2014 was from the Anastasia movement, that they banned all GMOs and all free trade. They got rid of all that. And now they grow like something like 87% of all the food that they need in their own country. They become the largest ancient green, biodynamically grown wheat producers in the world. Putin is moving to be one of the largest countries of organic food production. And a lot of that was led up because of the Anastasia movement. So many people in Russia, that's what they wanted. They wanted clean food. They wanted the ability to everybody to have food and everybody be involved in that food. And they wanted Chernobyl and a lot of this other radioactive stuff cleaned up. But yeah, so I think,
And that school system they came out with too,
yeah.
where the
Can you talk
older
about that?
kids taught younger kids.
Oh, that's right.
So the kids who've already done grade 1, 2, 3, I can't remember exactly how it cut off, and they would teach the newer kids that were coming in. So, and that's on the principle, the best way to learn something and hold that what you're learning is to teach it to someone else. And I
Yeah.
thought that was brilliant, but it apparently it kind of fell apart. I haven't been able to keep up on it afterwards because you don't get a lot of information on these things out of Russia. But I thought it was a brilliant way of doing schools.
Well, what's your idea of like what your community ideas are, LB? What are some kind of framework?
You've probably done more research on this, Bridgette, than I have, but outside observation or, outside looking or inside looking out, whatever. You look at the Amish and they're closer to what needs to be done than exists right now. Of course, the New World Order is about divide and conquer. They want everything under centralized control, which would be, they say they're going to have world government by 2020, and I see what Trump is doing is that's going to happen. He's just a fly in the ointment to create confusion. But the Amish system isn't perfect. One thing I discovered or thought when I, got myself out of the system and started studying law is that if a country or a people isn't on the same page in spiritually or, spiritually or naturally, that there's going to be a division and man will step in to control it. And that's basically the formula of the New World Order. The mixed religions, the mixed races, everything together, it just won't work. You have to have people on the same platform, or it's going to be controlled by man.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that's one of the reasons, like, that's why I walk the native spirituality, is because it's far different and it's original. It goes way back before any written word.
Right.
And we don't, because I had to get rid of a whole bunch of that. Well, we talked about this before, that I'm anti-Bible and I'm anti any kind of written religion. And so for me, it's more about me, being a co-creator, working with nature and all of the living beings, in this world, with the rooftop of the creator who, is the creator of all things in this world, kind of a
Right.
thing. But that's what's really been an obstacle for me, being on different kinds of communities, whether they're religious, whether they're farming, whether they're permaculture, I mean, whatever they're doing, is that I just don't adhere well to organized religion at all. And that's the thing, that with the native way, that it frees you up for you're encouraged to have your own personal relationship with the creator, no matter what that be. And then, come together in the community to do like the different kinds of ceremonies to celebrate the other living beings, you know, um, whenever those need to happen.
And that's what Yeshua taught. Personal relationship with the Creator.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, yeah, so I'm just not an advocate for biblical stuff. So there's just zero way for me that I could conform to any, like, for example, even though I'll have a biodynamic farm, I'm not going to be a culty like a lot of other people who get involved with Steiner are, and a lot of the communities are. And if you don't, kind of adhere to some of the ideas other than the farming principles, then you're going to have trouble in the community. And I've had full on, that's why I fell out of the biodynamic Northern California and the college, was because I got in a huge fight with some people because I felt pressured, and so I left. But yeah, so for me,
So I don't know why you're pressured, but that's why I've taken the stance I have.
yeah,
You and I got into a debate a couple weeks ago about. I said I'm not an Indian.
yeah, I know.
But that's why I've taken the Bible as a reference for myself, because most of the Western world knows the Bible, so it was easier for me, or it would be easier for people to understand the teachings of Yeshua, or Jesus the Christ, as he goes by in the church, to straighten that out than try to convince them to be Indians. That's where I'm
No,
at with
well,
that.
that's what not Indians don't try to, like. That's not that. You come there and you learn what they have to offer, and so there isn't. All my teachers have been that way. Just show up, learn, and that's all, and then practice on your own. But for me, just, we're talking about communities, and having been on 30 different communities with different kinds of spiritual ideas or spiritual study, one of the reasons why I've stepped out to kind of do a community that I and build it in a way that I feel that I could live within the framework and still teach people the things that they need to, um, that I feel like I should be teaching, to the outside world. And a lot of it has to do with me not being able to fit into other types of religions, and
That's
not
how.
probably not be able to bridge that in any way, shape, or form. So one of the reasons I stepped out to build a community was so that I could teach all the things that I need to know, that other people need to know to save the planet, like the soil, the farming, working with nature, and all these other
Sure.
things, but not allow people to just come and live on it. There would only be combat veterans that would be coming for apprenticeships to learn what I have to teach and then go back out into the world. So it wouldn't be, my community is not an open community for
Right.
One of
anybody.
the things, if I may, on native spirituality that a lot of people don't know, probably most don't know, is native spirituality is everything has spirit. So when they pray, so even a pebble on the ground has spirit. Everything has spirit, and when you give everything the entitlement of spirit, then it becomes respectful. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, you're respecting. So you respect the soil, you respect the ground, you respect the trees, you respect everything that's out there. Even your source for food, the water has to be respected. Otherwise, it's not gonna work for you. You're gonna end up with polluted water, and everything needs respect. And that's what Native spirituality is focused on, is everything has spirit. And when you do that, all of Mother Nature is brought into the same fold as the humans, the animal life that's out there. Everything has spirit. I go out, and deer will actually turn and they'll stop and give me a broadside. If I was a hunter, what they're doing is they're offering themselves up with a good heart shot, because that's part of their contract with the Native people, is that a percentage of them have to help feed the people of the Native community, and it keeps a balance. So if you get too many deer, pretty soon all the young trees that are coming up will get nibbled up, and the forest could die out, right? So it helps maintains the whole balance of everything. So it's a lot more deep than just picking up a book like the Bible and looking at it and reading through. The Bible actually tells you go out and conquer the world, right? And so basically the Bible is basically telling everybody that, yeah, everything out there in nature is yours, go use it. But there's no indications of teaching anybody how to respect what you're doing out there. Some Bibles might be different.
I see that.
And you look what we're doing now, like with the pollutions that we're creating, the power plants that are dating out, the nuclear plants, they're dating out and they're polluting the water, and all these other things that we're doing. When, Nikola Tesla came out and he had free power for all, and the only problem was there was no way to bill anybody on it, because it didn't have any way of measuring it with what he brought out, so they could properly bill people on it. And that got buried.
Yeah. So I think like everybody pretty much in the group kind of agrees with the fact that the foundation, like of any kind of community, always should be the soil, the land, and the food, and
Yes.
nature.
Yes. And it's all baby steps backwards out of this mess. But again, the foundation needs to be education and unity.
You can't have the unity without having the education firmly in place. But education has become indoctrination, and there's a lot of people who aren't questioning what they know because the system isn't quite working the way that we were taught it worked. And the blind belief in how to work within systems is really breaking down lately. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance. There's a lot of people who thought they were on the same page, but were so compartmentalized that they were using the same words to mean different things. And so I'm wondering how there's some reveal coming that we don't have yet, but things are crossing into each other, and I don't know. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance right now. Things were really good energetically, and now it almost seems like there's a different force taking place. Maybe Bridgette, you can explain it better because you read energy a lot different than I do. But I'm seeing that the divide in belief systems has created a stage where most people aren't in reality anymore. And that means that they're in their own reality, which means that different realities are simultaneously taking place, and that our concept of time is so broken right now that we're trying to get unity by allowing for different people to think differently and then look at the common good. And I'm not seeing that we have the methods to understand how people think because we're making the tacit assumption that people think like us because we are in agreement about our purposes. But there's a lot going on that needs us each coming from our own different directions and being in agreement to disagree corporally on a lot of different things because it's it's the reality breakdown that we have to feed to allow the concept of living earth, which I just use broadly as an expansion of the Gaia field theories. But there, we're at the point where people come from different sets of understanding. They understand the same things, but anytime we try and pull a group together, there's so many people who are actively targeting the members of the group that we're not going to get that unity unless we can each work separately as a group of one as an individual, take the path that we see and walk it, and then from experience bring people together to share their information and broaden each of our perspectives. But right now, even this group of five that we had, the resonance wasn't quite right. And when Karen left, I think that things happened a little different. Now I see she's back. So I don't know.
Well, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do. I mean, Lenny and I have been talking about this for years about how do we re-educate the public without having the funds and the resources to be able to do that, or we're not techies, so we can't build the technology. So that's one of the reasons, Lenny and Karen were on, did an experiment on Discord for a while, and then now they're more on Skype. So, we decided to, work on creating the Think Collaborative, which is a YouTube channel, just to try to put up weekly conversations that we're all having, to show that we can get along, we can find common ground, and we can have different people on to present different ideas or thoughts, and then put it out into the collective and the AI and see what comes back. Like we're just starting, so it's only been a couple months, and so we have gotten some positive feedback from people who are higher minded, really good feedback about that they love our Think Collab every week because of the things we talk about. So, I mean, that is something that's being, the banana is being thrown back on the window. But,
I have a,
it's,
it seems to me that I've been studying group theory long enough in chemistry that I understand the dynamics of the interaction between particles. And I'm sure that the interaction between people follows the principles and rules of chemistry, so that if I can draw some balanced equations with individual people balancing their own equations and us coming together every week to figure out each of our own little part of creating the collective reality. If we're going to change the narrative, we basically need to have a new narrative that works for each of us. And then as we add people and bring them in, take their ideas and shape that collective thought so it is inclusive of the diversity of thought that we all bring to the table.
Yes. I
Go ahead, LB.
yeah, I think I want to read the last paragraph, two paragraphs in my document I wrote several years ago called Pack Bottom Line. I don't know if anyone's going to disagree with this because I think, especially Bridgette, it incorporates what she's talked about already. Anyway, this is a document I wrote based on people's misunderstanding or non-understanding of what PAC was about. But the summary basically in these last two paragraphs are what where I've taken things. And the question, I could read the whole thing, but I might as well, because the other two paragraphs are very short. And the summary section is why the coalition. And I quoted Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch. It's off a old saying that too many chiefs and not enough Indians, or too many cooks spoil the broth. And Mike Brady said, too many cooks spoil the spaghetti sauce. I always like that show. I think Karen likes it too. Anyway, there's a maxim of law that states many men know many things. No one knows everything. In line with that maxim, there are many people that profess many things. Unfortunately, many things that people profess are redundant. For that reason, the problem is people not working together. The People's Awareness Coalition has been around since 1998. The primary goal of the coalition is to explore the truth in searching or providing liberty, quote unquote, I don't like that term, to people under the governmental system we live in. We differ from most other remedies because we have discovered an established position on law that, when exercised properly, puts people in an offensive position. Our remedy has a solid foundation and does not keep people in the box, quote unquote, like remedies others profess. Our goal is constitutional freedom, not putting band-aids on a system that was meant to be broken, i.e. the system will not be fixed. The coalition empathizes that there are people who feel they must remain part of the rebellion. You have to know my work to understand what I'm talking about. It's about being in rebellion against God and being in the communist system. That aside, unity is still needed. We have put together an evolutionary plan for all people to come together, the PAC Alliance program. The main program points are: 1, build local communities. That's networking together, doing different things. 2, correct the nationalities of people. And 3, watch what they are doing. The 2 primary points assist in taking back communities by building local economies. And Bridgette, you're involved in that kind of thing. The people who correct their nationality, safeguards them from the legislation that purviews through the 14th Amendment system. Regrettably, as the situation exists, most people center on watching what their government is doing and do nothing but complain and live in fear. That is what the adversary wants. So in regard to point 3, we will not just be watching we will expose their deeds through effective programs due to unity. We are not selfish sovereigns. We care about one another. We are building local communities. We are the lawful bodies politic of the American Union. We want our countries back from the rebels or the communists. Simply stated, why would people not want to be affiliated with the producer of this remedy? And I got a quote here from Tupper Saucy, who wrote Rulers of Evil. I don't know if anyone here has read that book, but it's excellent. He passed on a few years back, but then a correspondence with him back in like 2000 or 1998, I think is when we were corresponding. He said to me in an email, I admire PAC's readiness to inform and assist souls out of the New World. So yeah, I've been buried, you know. They've taken what impact I was having 20 years ago away from me.
Yeah, what was the book again? Just in case our
Rulers of Evil.
No, your book as well.
Oh, my book, The Red Amendment. And basically the Red Amendment is a reference to the 14th Amendment, which is a foundational amendment, or, you know, way the communists took over the United States. It's a foundational amendment that perverted the Constitution. And there, you know, there was a bunch of people out there. As soon as after I wrote the book and started PAC, were people out there pushing the Act of 1871, which is total horseshit. just disinformation. All these kind of things happened the last 20 years. And 10 years ago, they effectively buried PAC 10 years ago between Facebook and commandeering the movement from being militia-based, which is the protection of the states, according to people like Jefferson, from tyranny, and the other things that surround people being involved in the system. It actually says it's a crime to vote in the 14th Amendment, Section 2. And that's how they've usurped and enslaved people in the United States under fiction of law, or an operation of law, rather, based on, we used to call it silent judicial notice back in the 1990s in the law groups I was involved in. But basically, it's legal fiction based on operational law, the 14th Amendment. Operational law is something that operates pursuant to the document that governs the Union, and they've done different things throughout the world. Like I said, I've talked to people in Canada, for example, and they've noticed different things transpired in the mid 1800s. And like I said, Canada's communist overlay was formed in 1871. Not to
Karen,
be confused
did
with
you
that
want to
other
say
stuff.
something?
I was just going to ask for you to repeat. What was that concept again?
Which concept?
The legal silence something.
I'm having old timers disease or forget.
That's funny. Well, one of the things Gord and I, we've known each other for a while now. We talk about a lot of different things, and one of the things that we've recognized that's in common with Canada is about their gold system, their banking system. Their, was destroyed about the same time as ours. I mean, Nixon took ours out in 1971, and I think Canada's was taken out in 1974. And so a lot of Canadians can go back and look at the exact month that
it's all
their
progressive
system was taken over. But there's a lot of stuff that's happened in Canada with the people, so much so that, for example, there are just different things that are going on in Canada, I think way more than in the United States. But we have all this drama going on here, we've got economic stuff, people really not having enough jobs, lots of immigrants coming in, big natural disasters, politics, all these other things to majorly distract. I mean, we're looking at 425 million people in the United States, the same size basically as Canada. But there's only 20 million citizens in Canada for the same landmass, because they don't allow a lot of the stuff to go on in Canada still. I mean, there's corruption, but the people, they have a lot of, uprisings, especially with the Native people. When the Native people have had enough, they will push anybody out, and they're really rising up in Canada big time, the Seven Nations. So... But we can learn something from Canada.
Of the UK, and again, it comes back to, I think we need to really do some research on Commonwealth and what exactly that means, because I think we have seen between all of our collective minds experiences that language can and is used as a weapon. I would love it if Mike Gaddy could join this conversation, because I'm not sure on time in terms of what you want to keep this, but I think this is a conversation that requires multiple collabs, if you will. And I would love to, I think Mike Gaddy would be a great addition to this. I would welcome what he has to say, because Dr. Lenny, do you remember what's the name of the book that talks about the generations and every 60 or 80 years? I'm terrible at remembering that stuff.
Oh, give me a second and it'll come back to me.
Okay. We're all having...
I'm getting older, for one thing, but there's just so much to know and understand. And I myself, I don't remember people's names. You can introduce to me. If I meet someone face to face, I'm looking at them thinking, do I want to know this soul? I don't care what their name is. That's superficial. That's the way my
That's
that's
hilarious.
the way my mind works.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So,
But,
you know, it takes me a while to learn certain things.
Well, and I've had a lifelong ADHD issue, so we won't go into that. So if there really is ADHD, but these are all like we're asking the right questions, and we're not just assuming what we're told. And I think what's really amazing about the Canadian parallels that you brought up, Bridgette, is that like it's like wow, that's another path I need to go down, and look at what was happening at the same time, and were they in opposition? And that just like because me, I'm a big person, especially since meeting Dr. Lenny Thyme, on patterns.
Yeah, and if we talk about like one of the things that blew me away about looking at the population statistics between the U.S. and Canada, and how many resources we've used up in the United States, really, and sold to other people. But the other thing that blew me away was in Texas alone, at a few years ago, 20 million people were on food stamps in one state alone, which was the whole population of a country, Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not good. There's a problem.
I'm a social worker. I get it. I totally get it. And I don't like seeing that. And so, like, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure things out from all these great minds of you people.
It's not it's not easy. We're talking about reinventing the world, basically.
That's it.
But you know, they've been in control for 3,000, 4,000 years under this system. That's what rulers of evil goes back into. You know, how the Egyptians formulated into the Roman Empire, etc. And these same people are basically still in power.
Well, that's what Dr. Rose says, the guy who was the PhD historian. He was part of the Illuminati family, and then they took his 12-year-old son and they sacrificed him. And then he started doing YouTube videos where he was showing all the symbolic stuff through Switzerland. He called it the Pharaoh Show. He said because it's the pharaohs and the what's the 8-sided the octagon, right?
Octagon.
So he called
the
them
octagon,
octagons. And then he talks about the pentagon, you know what I mean? And what these mean, like the 5 side is the military for the octagon, which is the pharaohs. And he can show that they're also kind of a reptilian descent. They show themselves in some other the countries he travels as more reptilian and eating people. They actually have statues and shit of it.
I was going to say that I think ultimately the question that comes from our collective today is, can we reinvent the wheel, the quote unquote new way, and in a way that it can't be subverted or bastardized or whatever word you want to use, perverted, subverted, like whatever. I mean, is that possible?
I think it is. And I think that the idea that there's 2 ones in Fibonacci, individual unity, each of us being one, and collective unity, all of us being one, that we can have a framework using LB's pack system and create a low-level game to play out to inform us of all the things that we need people to know when we roll out the game for real after the election. And using game theory to work things out where we play characters in a role during a 2-hour period in whatever groups we want to come together with, addressing a question and looking at the different perspectives on the question in order to bring back that game later on at a higher level. And that if I can read how things are working, the window to change the way everybody thinks about how things go is to take their entertainment and move it into edutainment and educate people by their ability to put themselves into a game and immerse themselves and learn something from the game and provide the proper rewards through gaming that gets people to understand the mechanism of how to do Unity as a
Yeah, and
game.
also probably throw in there that Lenny started reading, and then we'll start, having some finishing thoughts as we're coming into the last kind of 20 minutes. We've kind of decided collectively to keep it at 2 hours. If it goes over 2 hours, it's too hard for people to watch.
Yeah.
But Lenny was, he talks a lot about human scale because it's based off some books that he read that were written in the 70s. Will you give us
Yeah,
kind of an idea on what human scale the
Kirkpatrick Sale, who's still out writing, wrote a book called Human Scale when Jimmy Carter was president, talking about what individuals can do by paying attention to everything on human scale instead of corporate scale. And it was a real good book. And then Reagan came in and threw out everything Carter, and nobody had any influence. And the book fell onto library shelves and never got looked at again. But the idea of working on human scale and developing mechanisms for people like us to understand and interact with each other, I think will roll out to the general public looking for something after the freak show we're going to call an election takes place. But The Fourth Turning by Strauss and Howe is the book Karen was asking about. And it takes 80-year periods and breaks them into 20-year cycles where this is the end of the fourth cycle, the winter in 2020. And if you go back to 1940, 1860, and 1780, the world was at these sort of existential crises that it is now. And they use the term a gray champion. And whether it's Trump or Putin or somebody who's playing the role of the gray champion, it was Roosevelt, Churchill, and those guys who played that role in 1940s. In the 1860s, it was Lincoln. In the 1780s, well, that was the revolution. Take your pick of many people.
what was the guy's name that wrote the book The Human Scale again?
Kirkpatrick Sale, Sale. And I've had the book twice in my possession, and both times people borrowed the copy, and I never got it back.
Mm.
Once one of the guys died while he had it, and there was nothing I could do because couldn't ask him for it. But it was worth giving, and it just shows that we're going to have to do it on all scales simultaneously. And my background is in chemistry. I'm a scientist. And I got out into nature over the last 3 years and didn't deal with human populations at all. And now that I've come back into the world, it's quite a different world than the one I left. And I really left that world sometime around 2007, 2008. And we can reinvent the world from scratch in a system like Gord explains, where everything has spirit and is alive. And it's the concept of water that really needs rediscovery, because we've been using water as a system to carry our waste, whereas it's the most important living thing in the whole universe.
Absolutely.
Hey, LB, what was that book that you talked about? The evil something?
Rulers of evil. Basically, the gist of the book is these people think people are evil, the natural sinner type thing, and they're ruling them based on they need to be controlled. That's what the gist of it is. But like I said, it goes back to
I was just going to put
control.
a link in here.
I'm not saying that Tupper believed in that, but that's what they believe. I've said that about people, many times. I go, it doesn't matter what you believe, it's what they believe because they control the world. So you can believe whatever you want, but it doesn't matter because they're in control.
Right.
But you have to know the enemy. That's plain and simple.
Well, you know, the
That
thing is like one of the things that the Hopi always say is that um, that when the war inside you ends, that the war outside of you will end. Doesn't mean that it'll change dramatically the world outside of you, but how you will interact with it will be completely different. And that's kind
right.
of it. Who to know who's your enemy? Well, your enemy first starts as yourself.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
Um,
Any anyway,
Hi.
I
All right. Anybody have any last? Gord, did you want to say something? And then we'll go into
I
last
do, I
thought.
do, because there is a solution developing along the lines that we're all talking about here right now that's in the development stages. And the group is the Sovereign Squamish Government. Now, Squamish is the territories of CM Kiapalanog. CM is the correct word for chief in native language. CM Kiapalanog and his wife Irene, as Bridgette knows, they had developed land claims for the province of British Columbia, extending more into
Their
Canada.
original treaty land claims, way long
Yeah,
before
so
anybody. Yeah.
so anyway, they're expanding it into the states, and now what we have developing is a land. They've expanded the land claim to include the entire continent of North America, now through the natives, and they're working at developing a whole new system of communities, the whole package
That
for
everybody's welcome to be involved in. Nobody
absolutely
is it's for everybody.
the 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 phrase that they use is "we're all one." So there's no division. There's no white, there's no black, there's no red. We're all one. And we bring the knowledges that we all have from our collective backgrounds, everything, we bring it in, put it into the pot, stir it up, and we start putting this out on the land so everybody has an equal perspective from who they are. But
And the other thing too is
we,
that what they had to do, Capilano had to step away from his tribe in order for him and Irene to actually help them. And they created, so Squamish Nation is totally separate from the other Squamish, the going back to the original, their original stuff and their original native stuff. And what they did was they went up against the Canadian government and the Bank of Canada, and they won. They won a lawsuit of $450 million for the Squamish people because of what the Bank of Canada and Canada did to them. And then before that, they took back most of their original land territory, which was like, I don't know, the bottom part of British Columbia, the top part of Washington State, the top part of Idaho, part of Alberta, little corner of Montana. And then Canada and the bank wouldn't pay them the money, so they filed a huge international lien against them. And then Canada has not been able to borrow money or any kind of, shenanigans against the people of Canada because of the lawsuit, because there's a pending lien. So they really kind of have really done some serious wrench throwing into the mechanics of a lot of what's going on in Canada. And then they're teaching all the other nations in Canada how to do this and helping them
and
in
the
the
United
process.
States and the
Yeah, in
United
the
States.
US, yes.
Just so everybody knows, CM Kiapalano has, as far as I know, it's 4 attempts on his life through the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They have been actively trying to kill him for a long time because of what he stands for.
Yeah,
And he's
exactly.
still alive.
Yeah, he's still alive against all odds, but he's still
Against
alive.
all odds, yeah, and he's very much a believer in the people.
Oh, and the other
So
cool thing that they're doing is that they've started their own banking system based on underground resources that they'll never dig up, and they'll never allow to be mined and sold, because they're the underground resources that belong in the land for the people. So they're still in the process of finishing getting their you know, banking system up to support building a whole bunch of communities. Their long-term goal is to wherever the land claims have taken over is that they're going to rebuild communities, whether they're 50 people or they're, 10,000 people, more into a very sustainable lifestyle where you'll have, like more traditional healthcare centers in each community. You'll have different kinds of medicine. You'll have food growing in those communities, so it supports, all the people. So, so people don't have to go anywhere, right? They can stay within their own community and be part of the system and be fully supported. So that's kind of like, because I got kind of dragged into it a while ago too, and kind of consulted a little bit on the outskirts. So, but I'm not really involved
They
right
look
now.
at modern subdivisions. You look at we got a boom here going on where I live, modern subdivisions, and they look at it as prison camps. The way they're designed and laid out, they all look at them as prison camps. Maybe they don't act as prison camps now, but easily converted.
Well, yeah, they're like cattle feedlots. Go this direction. This is the only direction you can go. Go to the grocery store to get your, feed for the day.
Yep. Hey guys, I got something to do in about 10
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
So
So do you have any last thoughts, LB? But yeah, we're going to be closing here in the next few minutes. But do you have any finishing thoughts, Mr. LB?
I guess what I said, the Pack Alliance is just a group of people. I've got another document called the Pack Unification Project that goes into that, and it's about just unifying people under one system. It's basically us against them type thing, and we know who them is. We talked about that a little bit, the rulers of evil, and we're not going to get anywhere if we don't get together and basically have a clearinghouse to get rid of the crap. And 90% of the stuff on the internet is crap, based on disinformation, misinformation, things that aren't important to get our land back, so we can start supporting ourselves, like Bridgette talks about. So that's where things need to go. The unity thing is most important right now. Education, of course, goes along with that. Proper education.
Okay, Lenny, any final thoughts that you may have?
Yeah, I agree very much that education is the unifying factor, that coming up with a different system that's not indoctrination, where each of us can train people as acolytes to take what we're talking about and run it and use it. And the more this gets used by people, the more we'll learn about how to do it. The rules can be very fluid, but there have to be some rules that basically train people to understand and get rewarded for the behaviors that they need to have. Personal responsibility goes with human rights. So I like what I'm hearing, and I think I'll read further into LB's works, and we'll come up with something that can be gamified and work for everyone.
Any final thoughts, Gord?
Yeah, I could swamp you in thoughts. I really like what I'm hearing here with everybody, and I think we do have the makings of taking this and expanding it. And one thought I had while we were talking is I could probably arrange, if everybody here is interested, I could probably get Caplano and Irene to come on and talk about what they're working on too.
Yeah, we're always looking for presenters. So we kind of had a discussion about, people having conversations, but then expanding it out to people who might want to come in and present. And then just letting us know, like if you want to start coming on regularly, Gord, so that I can remind you on Sunday, because I try to send out the reminders to remind people, or like if LB wants to continue to come on as you know, part of a greater conversation with whoever we get on. Karen and Lenny and I are the three main people that kind of hold down the fort for the collab, kind of as we're building it. But we're open. Just have them contact me, and then we can set up a Sunday where morning where they can present, and we'll just send them a. If they don't like Skype, I can do Zoom as well. And I know Irene's probably going to have some issues with Skype, so I can always send a Zoom link to everybody, and everybody can get on that way, and I can record it as well and put it up on. So if people want something a little bit safer, like especially for Irene and Cap, because they're kind of really political, we can do it on Zoom.
Yeah.
So just some thoughts.
We can organize that. Yeah.
Okay. Is Lenny? Lenny, are you done with what you had to close with?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, Gord, do you have any last thoughts?
Oh, Lord. Yeah, no, I've got lots of last thoughts. I think this whole unity thing is the key. Like the border between the 49th parallel, I think we can erase that and start looking at it as a pact of humans on this planet looking for a better way of doing things, and not this division of borders, and even provinces divide us up. It's division is an easy way to manage everybody, right? And it goes from the macro right down to the micro. It's like the subdivisions are like little prison camps, that kind of concept, right? Easier to manage people. And if you're being managed, who are you really? I for one never really liked being managed. I was a rebel right from, I think, the day I learned how to walk, and I haven't really changed a whole lot going into my old age. We need to come up with ways of keeping people unified in a way that keeps ourselves moving in a non-aggressive, non-threatening. Because if we become perceived as aggressive and threatening, then we're not here to knock everybody out of where they are so much as to bring people to a better way of being where we are. I don't know if I oversaid that, or
I agree. Well, and the thing is, I'm just really glad that I can be a part of, us trying to, create better conversations and bring people in, and gives us a lot of food for thought as we go into the week, for sure.
Yeah, and they're pulling in a lot of people from Native communities south of the border now with what they're doing. So I don't know how far along it is, but I will engage with them and have a conversation along these lines and just see if there's a willingness to join in and spread the word a little bit more fluidly.
Yeah, and just tell them we can do it on Zoom. We
Yeah.
can do a more secure, legal secure kind of a thing for them, just to make sure that they don't get hacked badly like they do. All right. Well, anyway, this is been the end of the Think Collab, and we thank everybody, LB Bork especially, for coming on and presenting, even though it ends up always being a conversation. So between everybody, and Gord Esau showed up from Canada. Dr. Lenny Thyme, me, the moderator, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff today, and Karen Possessky. So we're all glad everybody could come on. And we hope you really enjoy this once it goes on to the Think Collaborative, our YouTube channel. And if you have any comments or interest about anything that we've talked about, you can email me. I would take the direct email for it's thinkcolab, COLAB. Now you guys are wearing off on me, at gmail.com. So if you have anything constructive you would like to add, or any information that you want to bring to the Think Collab, please email us there, and I will bird dog that. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining. Thanks for coming on, and yeah, have a